capture the ideas that people are currently working on. And the first is the community park. We show a picture that we have of the Moreland Avenue site. We tried to find the picture with the tree that's been planted, so just so you know, there's been an oak planted there as well. But the idea would be that we would come back in 60 days with a plan and some financing recreations to figure out how to create a park in the Moreland Avenue neighborhood. And what we know is that the land has been zoned for a park, but it's never been constructed. And so there is opportunity there. And potentially the property owner is willing to hold discussions at some point on the purchase of a park. But it's really going to require us as staff to work on determining the process, the resources needed, and most important, the community has really rallied around the park, and so we need to be able to say to the community, the stakeholders, what can we do with you to try to make this park a reality? And so as we come back, that's what we would like to report on. Another piece, your board has discussed weapons exchange programs in the past, particularly when we're talking about real weapons, but there's also a possibility that there could be replica exchange programs having to do with just replicas, and we've seen programs where replica weapons have been exchanged for other types of toys, so there's a possibility that you could do that exchange. The sheriff has expressed support for handling that program, assuming the resources are available, and so we'd like to look at that one more time and then bring it back to your board with regard to the exchange program. The next piece are a set of programs that are a set of information and sort of attention to sort of some internal functionings that we have that I think are really important to the community and to your board. And the first is, so where are we on our cultural diversity recruitments and where are we on our training programs? We currently have diversity training programs that are handled by human resources and clearly are also done throughout the public safety departments. But we want to bring that to your board so that you can sort of understand what we're doing to try to enhance and implement greater diversity training within the county. And there's probably a lot more that we could do. And so the intent is that we would come forward and sort of outline for you the programs that we have. And then to the extent that we can enhance those or improve them and strengthen them, we certainly would want to. The sheriff has been very clear that he's supportive of looking at these types of training programs and enhancing training programs where possible. He has training programs with regard to lethal force and alternatives, and he'd be happy to come and explain that to your board at a future date in order to make sure that your board understands and the community understands sort of what the protocols and practices are within the sheriff's department, sort of to shed some light on those programs so everyone sort of understands what it is statewide that people are doing with regard to post and to dealing with lethal training. So that's this next one about lethal force and alternatives training. And then we have a piece about the Lapel cameras. I know your board had expressed interest in making sure that we look at the Lapel cameras, and the sheriff has already begun to work on Lapel programs. He's got a pilot program that he's implemented. I think he's dedicated $30,000 to Lapel programs, to Lapel cameras, and is trying to figure out how to roll that out. But he absolutely is interested in a more broad program, and we bring that forward to your board. We know he has approximately 500 people on his staff, about 250 are in patrol, and so that would mean that we would probably spend around $250,000. But he's going to be looking into it, and he'd be happy to come back to your board, and certainly would be very supportive of your board financing something like a Lapel camera program if you wanted to in the future. The other thing we've listed is something called Rapid Response Team for Youth Involved Events. And this is actually something that maybe could be modeled on the county's current existing program, the CAPE program, which has just received recognition from NACO, but it's a school-based, peer-to-peer early intervention and prevention program. And so we're thinking that we could possibly develop a similar type of model that could deal with rapid response for youth. And so that's another piece. The health department will be working on this, particularly in mental health, as we go forward with the sheriff and with human services. The next piece that staff's interested in is on a regular basis, every year we put out an annual report to the community that talks about what we're doing in the county, generally targeted to our strategic planning and to our goals. And one of the concerns we had is maybe we don't know what the sheriff's office is doing, and could we put out some information to the community about their efforts. And the sheriff has agreed to work with us to put information on what they're doing with regard to community building efforts and some of the work that they're doing already so that people can be informed. And so when this report comes out, I think it'll come out in early January. My office will be working with the sheriff as well as our other departments to sort of try to highlight our community building efforts to a certain extent. And then we've mentioned it several times this morning, but I want to say that community engagement is one of those things. When Peter came on board as the Community Government Affairs Office, he had this idea of being able to build on the best practices for community engagement for seniors, Latinos, and low income that he had done as a part of the health department. And it sort of gave him carte blanche to put it together. And so we expect in January to come to your board and really talk about what we could do next on community engagement. And we've been pretty good about doing very standard sort of methods of community engagement, putting out our media releases and making sure we communicate to the public in various languages. But I think that there's a very different approach that could be successful, and we're hoping to do that. And if you have any more specific questions about that, we will be bringing it back in January, but also be happy to have Peter answer those questions should the board have them. So our next piece is, what are we doing for the bilingual community? And so this piece came from the Economic Development Board staff that said maybe we could do better small business development assistance. And so within the next 60 days, we want to try to return with a proposal to how to work on a development assistance we currently have, but also look at other alternatives for an independent citizen review body, and come back to us within 60 days. Now, this is very ambitious. What this means to us is if this group is convened in January, and we expect to have a report back in March, this task force, the individuals in this task force, will probably need to work 2 to 4 hours a week for those first 3 months to really come back and make a strong recommendation to your board. The next piece is that we think that they should look at community policing options. We give them a little bit more time. We're saying by April 30th, 2014, or May 1st, if that's the way it works. But we would like them to look at community policing opportunities and sort of what we're doing in our community, and then report back to your board. The next one is that by June 1st, we are hoping that they could look at whether or not the office of the coroner should be separately elected from the office of the sheriff, and that would be a report that would come back at that point. And then probably most important, the bottom line is starting today, or starting at the point when this task force is convened, we would hope that they would listen to the community feedback and bring anything that they believe is relevant and important issues that merit county attention back to your board on a periodic basis, and certainly by the end of their work, which we're hoping will be a one-year work plan, so that your board can hear what the community is saying and what this task force is saying. So how would that work? You probably wondered why we had these 3 great individuals sitting here, and we took a picture of them. We really, your board had given us direction that it be the health department, the human services department, and the county administrative office, among others, and certainly the district attorney and the sheriff's office and county council will be some of those individuals that would support us. But that group be the staff. And so I think you all know these people, but I would like to say the first person is Jennifer Murray, our deputy CAO. She comes from my office, and we're recommending that Jennifer be the person that sort of organizes the task force effort. And then joining her in staffing will be these other 2 people. Brian Vaughn, who is the director for health policy planning and evaluation. And then Oscar Chavez, who is our assistant human services director. Do you have a title after that? Okay, so the good news is this would be our intrepid crew that will be sort of managing the day-to-day work of the task force, and they'll be assisted clearly by Peter Rumble, who will be doing the community engagement, Christina Rivera in my office, who will be doing the budget, the staffs that report directly to them, as well as the other county departments to do that work. So we believe there would be a core team, and part of the job of this core team would not only to keep the business of the task force going forward, but also something that's just as important, which is to be the conduit for making sure that information gets back to and from the various community or county commissions and task forces that your board has appointed. And we have a list of them in the sheet of all the different commissions and task forces, but their job would be to make sure that the work of the CAE task force gets out to things like upstream to the Human Rights Commission, and I'm forgetting any more. Do you want to share with me what some of those are? You get the idea. They're looking at me like, you get the idea, so that's the idea. So Jennifer, Brian, and Oscar will be our crew and be responsible for making sure that there's that connection to your board's advisory groups and commissions. Now I want to talk about the recommended task force composition. We recommended that 3 members be appointed by each board member, 3 members be recommended by the sheriff, 2 members be appointed by the mayor of the city of Santa Rosa, and 1 is recommended for appointment by the district attorney. That gets us to a total of 21 members. And the most important part about this is the bottom line there, which is the task force members should represent our diverse community, not only demographically, geographically, and from all walks of life. We've given you sort of a chart that could describe all those components, and we chose the unincorporated communities that were part of the planned development areas, but there clearly are other unincorporated communities equally as meritorious, and so just share that with you, but we did put the PDA communities in there in that list. And the idea would be that hopefully by next week, I know your board members have been considering possible applicants or candidates for the task force, but by next week we would be able to come back to your board with a list for your board to approve of appointments. And if that's too ambitious, we could probably come back at the beginning of the year. We'll look forward to some direction from your board. You can run them through my office to make sure that we know that they are sort of balanced. In talking to each of you, sort of as hearing your suggestions, I think we've got a fairly well-rounded board. But I know the people that you're thinking about possibly appointing, and you've been approached by others, may or may not be up to the time commitment that we're asking for. Jennifer has suggested that the first meeting of this group might be Monday, January 6th in the evening. That could be the initial meeting. And Monday is a great time for us because if we get our work done on Monday, then we have all week to try to complete it. We can put an agenda package together for the next meeting on the following Monday. But it's going to be up to the task force members to actually adopt their own bylaws and determine when and how they're going to meet. And we'll just simply follow suit with that. But that's the idea, that the first meeting could be as early as Monday, January 6th in the evening.
If I may, I just want to reiterate something that you said, and I appreciate that you did, because I think we're all sensitive to make sure that the task force is composed geographically diverse in and of itself, be it male, female, race, and everything else. And so again, seeing that there's 3 nominations from each of those of us up here, as well as the sheriff and the DA, those will be run through your office. And there'll be a way to communicate to make sure that we have that fully diverse community task force that we desire, correct?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that with your board's direction. I mean, I don't want to get in the business of determining who you're going to appoint, but I certainly can keep tabs as we get closer to say, hey, I think we're missing someone from South County, or from your district in this area, or the coast, or North County, or we have which is the tendency, we tend to come up with individuals that are working in the community that we know, and so it's harder to come up with the 18 to 24-year-olds, and so that's going to be a struggle for us. We're going to have to work very hard to make sure we get those youth appointees. So I'm happy to sort of keep you posted on sort of how it's looking, but really it would be up to all of you to make those appointments.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm seeing some head nodding, so I'm thinking I'm not off base in making sure that we just want to assure that ultimately, because if we're making 3 blind appointments, as it were, of the 21, that we're not going to be surprised by the makeup of the ultimate panel. So I just want to make sure that the public knows that there's going to be a process in place that will make sure that we come back and double check. And you're right. The truth of the matter is, for this particular task force of 21, there are undoubtedly 1,000 people out there in the community that would be well qualified to be able to serve, and it'll be really trying to find the right individuals without necessarily having quotas and whatnot, but just to make sure that it's well-rounded and truly representative of the entire community. So I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure we emphasize that going forward.
Thank you. Our next piece is really to talk about what this effort's going to cost us, and in some ways I think we're really privileged for your board to have put money aside in contingencies for unexpected events, and so to a great extent, as we lay out these numbers, I was thinking about how difficult it would be in other cases where people don't have the contingencies to be able to say, hey, here's the resources that we need, and we're gonna put it forward, but we're proposing that if